London, early winter. You receive a summons from Mr. Jonathan Harrow, a newly rich merchant whose wife has been unable to eat for weeks. The note insists the matter is urgent, and because you are Dr. Julian Ashford, the physician noblemen trust, when their wives grow delicate and their daughters faint from nerves, you go. What you don't know is that today you will meet someone whose cooking and courage will challenge everything you believe about health. If you're here, you probably still believe in love that lingers. You may not make it through this one without remembering someone. If this story moves you, I'd be honoured if you'd like and subscribe. Let me know where you're listening from and whether it's day or night. Now, let's step into this moment together. You arrive at the Harrow townhouse shortly past noon. A footman shows you toward the kitchen, the heart of the problem apparently, and the heat strikes before you even cross the threshold. Inside, a young woman stands over a pot thick with steam, flour on her cheek, sleeves rolled past the elbow, confidence in her stance. Meg Fletcher, the Harrows' new cook, her first official day. Though you don't know, she spent the past week quietly observing every joyless meal fed to Mrs. Harrow. You scan the table, rich broth, too fragrant, too coloured, too alive for a woman who cannot eat. This is unsuitable, you say. Her stomach is delicate, she should have plain broths, simple, mild food, nothing heavy. Meg turns, her eyes are sharp. With respect, sir, she says, Madam Harrow has not eaten properly because everything she has served tastes like boiled regret. Regret, you repeat. Yes, she says calmly. Bland, grey, soulless. Anyone would avoid it. You inhale. Food is not meant to delight, it is meant to restore. Then perhaps you have forgotten, she replies, that joy restores more than any boiled sorrow ever will. Before you can answer, a pan behind her slips from its hook. She lunges for it. You reach at the same time. A splash of hot broth nearly hits your hand. She yanks you back. You steady her elbow. Heat. Clatter. Too close. She regains her balance first. Reckless, you mutter. Cold-hearted, she answers, utterly unbothered. You leave the kitchen before she can deliver another blow to your professional dignity, but not before Mrs. Harrow eats a full serving of Meg's dish and declares, with enthusiasm, that it is the first pleasant thing she has tasted in months. You say nothing, but irritation burns hotter than the stove you just escaped. 2 weeks pass. 2 weeks of Harrow's household sending word that Mrs. Harrow now eats with alarming enthusiasm. 2 weeks of hearing your own name thrown about with less gratitude than before. Every time the Harrow carriage passes your consulting rooms, you half expect another summons. But none comes. Instead, Mrs. Harrow's praise spreads through the merchant circles of Cheapside, London's busy merchant quarter, where households thrive on gossip as much as trade. Not for you, not for your advice, but for her, Meg Fletcher. You try not to think of her. Try not to think of the way she challenged you in that kitchen. Try not to think of the moment she grabbed your wrist to pull you from the falling pan. A gesture too quick to be polite, too instinctive to be rehearsed. But the irritation remains, and irritation lingers only when it has something warm to cling to beneath it. On a grey afternoon, a footman in Lord Redcombe's colours, green coat, brass buttons, appears at your door. You're summoned to the club, your father's old haunt, the place he once called the only room in London where a man may think clearly. You go. Lord Redcombe stands before the hearth, letters in hand, expression stone-carved. The club is failing, Ashford, he says. Members dine elsewhere. They call our tables joyless. They say your menus are fit for invalids, not gentlemen. You stiffen, but you do not flinch. Redcombe continues. If we cannot revive the club's reputation by the 12 days of Christmas, I will shut it down. A murmur spreads through the room. A few younger men groan. Older ones shake their heads. This club has stood for decades, its carpets worn, its tables polished by generations of elbows and arguments. And then Redcombe says it. Harrow has given us a solution. His new cook, a young woman named Meg Fletcher. Your heartbeat stutters just once. She restored his wife's appetite. The family sings her praises. I am persuaded to borrow her for the club. 3 days a week. A chorus of agreement rises. Harrow beams with pride. The steward nods with relief. You say nothing. Redcombe clasps your shoulder. You will supervise the menus, Ashford. You will work with her. A physician's discipline paired with a cook's instinct, that is what the club needs. You nod because you must. But inside, a coil tightens. She will come here, into your space, into your kitchen, into the last corner of the world that still feels like your father's voice warming the walls, and she will challenge you again. Of course she will, Harrow adds cheerfully. She's bold, Ashford, quick-tongued, but she listens when the logic is sound. You remember her eyes, bright, unafraid. You remember her standing between you and the boiling pan as though she had the right. Bold, yes, and dangerous to your equilibrium. You keep your voice steady. When does she begin? Tomorrow, Redcombe says. Tomorrow. You step out into the cold street, breath fogging the air. Snow threatens but does not fall, and you tell yourself this is merely duty, merely work. But for the first time in many years, the prospect of stepping into a kitchen makes your pulse behave in a manner you cannot name. Meg Fletcher will arrive tomorrow, and you already feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. Meg Fletcher arrives at the club kitchen the next morning before you do. You walk in with your coat still dusted in frost, and there she stands, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, chin lifted as if she has every right to be in a room built for gentlemen's appetites. For the briefest moment you both freeze. She recognises you. You recognise her. And the kitchen staff, already suspicious of anything new, look between you as if waiting for one of you to explode. You school your features into composure. Miss Fletcher, you say. Dr. Ashford, she replies, far too calmly for a woman who once accused you of boiled sorrow. The steward, Mr. Keane, clears his throat. The club expects a trial supper this evening, sir, a small gathering of members. They will wish to judge whether this collaboration is wise. His hesitation is pointed. Everyone knows your health menus were failing. Everyone knows Meg is an outsider from a merchant house. You set your casebook on the table. She sets her basket of ingredients beside it, and there it begins. You propose boiled fowl. She proposes ragout. You suggest plain fish. She recommends roasted meats with herbs. You ask for weak soup. She lists puddings. It is a duel fought in syllables. Finally she folds her arms. Dr. Ashford, if you remove every ounce of flavour, the members will leave hungrier than they arrived. They came for their health, you answer. No, she says, they came because they want to feel alive. Her voice is quiet, firm, deadly precise. You inhale. Slowly. Compromise becomes the only path. She agrees to make lighter versions of her dishes, less dripping, less cream, fewer rich gravies. You agree to allow herbs, seasoning, and God help you, a small pudding. You watch her work through the afternoon. Her movements are steady, sure, nothing careless, nothing reckless. It irritates you how capable she is, and it irritates you more that she does not look to you for approval. Evening settles. The first trial supper begins. A handful of club members sit in a private room, unimpressed at first. Then the dishes arrive. The white soup, light but flavourful. The roast chicken, herbs instead of dripping. Vegetables cooked to tenderness, not to death. And baked apples with the slightest touch of sugar. They eat in silence, they eat without grimacing. One gentleman lifts his spoon again. Another nods slowly. A third leans back, hand on his stomach, thoughtful rather than pained. Quiet praise drifts through the doorway. This is better than your usual fare, Ashford. Not too heavy, but not dull. Refreshing, actually. Refreshing. A word no man has ever used for your menus. You keep your expression unreadable, but something shifts in your chest. a small, unwelcome warmth. When Meg leaves the kitchen after service, she passes the table where you stand reviewing notes. She pauses. You lift a spoon, tasting one of the sauces she had insisted upon. She catches you. Her brows rise. Her eyes brighten with unmistakable amusement. You set the spoon down immediately. Composure. Always composure. She dips her head, half a bow, half a victory, and walks out. You watch the door swing shut behind her. Threatening woman, talented woman, and very likely the one person who might actually save this club. You tell yourself it is only the club's survival that concerns you, but as you gather your casebook, you know full well it is no longer only that. 2 mornings after the trial supper, you finish a round of visits near Bond Street. The wind is sharp, the sky dull, and you intend to return to your consulting rooms with a clear mind. Then you hear your name. Julian? You turn. Miss Lydia Vale stands at the doorway of Madame Renard's modiste shop, draped in winter silk the colour of champagne. She was once your closest companion. Not your betrothed, not your promised. Just a woman who expected more warmth from you than you could ever give. Her smile is bright, though her hands tremble slightly on her muff. I heard you were still in this part of town, she says lightly. Renard insisted I try this gown. What do you think? You offer a polite nod. Elegant, as always. Her gaze flicks over you, pausing on the faint scent of herbs still clinging to your coat from Meg's kitchen yesterday. You look tired, she says. Still working yourself to the bone? Or has the club finally worn you out? The club is demanding, you answer, but necessary. Necessary? She laughs softly. I remember a time when you cared more for efficiency than nostalgia. You stiffen a fraction. She always had a way of speaking that made you sound heartless when you were only controlled. Madame Renard appears behind her, fussing over stitching. Oh, Dr. Ashford, she says with a low bow. You must come to the Christmas display. Miss Vale will be our centrepiece, the very image of grace. Lydia tilts her head. I must keep a certain figure for it. Renard says even cream is dangerous. Dangerous. As if a spoonful of cream could bring ruin. You study her briefly, the faintness around her eyes, the way she presses her lips together as if hunger were a virtue. You've seen this before. Nerves disguised as discipline. You should eat properly, you say quietly. Starvation serves neither health nor beauty. She colours at once. You haven't changed, she murmurs. Still lecturing, still believing restraint is the only path to grace. You exhale through your nose. Perhaps you deserve that. Before you can answer, a pair of modiste clients whisper nearby. Have you heard? The dining club is offering new menus. They say the food is delightful and healthy. How miraculous! The word stings, not because it isn't true, but because the miracle has less to do with you and more to do with the cook with flour on her cheek. Lydia follows your gaze, picks up the tone of the murmurs. Oh, she says, so that is why you smell of kitchens. You have someone new working beside you. You give nothing away, but her eyes sharpen. Be careful, Julian. Men like you fall for ideas, not people. And cooks. Cooks complicate everything. She brushes your sleeve with practiced delicacy before turning back into the shop. You stand in the street a little longer than necessary, letting the cold cut through your thoughts. Later you return to the club. Meg is already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, cheeks flushed from heat. She looks at you only briefly, just long enough to acknowledge your presence. But you notice the difference immediately. 2 days ago she was merely competent. Today she moves like she belongs, and something in you bristles, not at her skill, not at her confidence, at the realization that she is undoing you without meaning to, undoing your assumptions, undoing your certainty, undoing your pride. Mr. Keene approaches you with a menu scroll. Dr. Ashford, he murmurs. Miss Fletcher suggests a St. Nicholas's Eve supper next week. A touch festive, she says. Nothing too rich. Festive. In your club. You look at her across the kitchen. She meets your gaze unflinching. You should refuse. You should shut down the idea of spices and joy and anything that distracts from discipline. But the trial supper still lingers on your tongue. Light, balanced, unmistakably hers. Very well, you say. We will prepare a St. Nicholas's supper, her eyes widen. Just faintly. Just enough for you to notice. You turn away before she sees too much. You are a physician, a man built on logic, and yet, as you leave the kitchen, you carry one undeniable truth with you. Meg Fletcher is a threat to your equilibrium, and you have no idea how to stop her. On the day of the St. Nicholas's supper, the club is louder than usual. You step inside expecting the usual quiet of polished mahogany and muttered politics. Instead, Lord Redcombe stands at the centre of the dining room like a general announcing a campaign. Gentlemen, he declares, the club will host a supper for each of the 12 days of Christmas. One night for every household represented here. 12 tables, 12 menus, 12 chances to restore our reputation. A rumble of interest sweeps through the room. 12 noblemen, 12 knights, 12 opportunities to be judged by men who believe appetite is a sport. You feel the weight settle on your shoulders. But Meg Fletcher stands beside the serving sideboard. Quiet, observant, hands folded neatly. And for a moment the burden feels shared. Redcombe turns to you. Dr. Ashford, you and Miss Fletcher will design the sequence. A balance between health and pleasure. If we succeed, the club will survive not by mercy but by triumph. Pressure is nothing new to you. Recognition is. You catch Meg's eyes. She nods once. Steady. Ready. Later, in the kitchen, you spread your casebook on the table. Meg sets down her own small ledger, a frayed notebook filled with sketches of dishes, flavour notes, and margins scrawled with ideas. You gesture toward it. You plan menus on paper. I try, she says. Ideas move quickly. Ink helps me keep up. You consider that more interesting than you should. Together you begin shaping the 12 days. Fish for the first day of Christmas, roast for the second, a lighter supper on the third, and so on. She leans over the table, pointing to ingredients, adjusting ideas, crossing out dishes too rich. You counter with portions, health concerns, milder spice. It becomes a rhythm. Your restraint, her creativity, meeting somewhere in the middle. Then a voice cuts through the kitchen doorway. Meg! A man steps inside. Broad-shouldered, rough around the edges with a butcher's confidence. She stiffens. Samuel, she says quietly. Samuel Pike. You know the type. A man who grew up among knives and hangs his pride on the weight of meat. He looks you over. Doctor, he nods, as if you're the one intruding. I came to see if this place has stolen Meg's sense. She used to cook real food before all this fancy work. Your jaw tightens. Meg steps between you before you answer. It's work, Sam. Good work. Go home. He scoffs, but his eyes soften. You know my offer still stands. You don't need to stay a servant forever. Your pulse slips sideways. Offer. Meg's cheeks warm, not with affection, but with embarrassment. She repeats firmly, go home. Samuel leaves with a grunt. His boots thud heavily on the floor, each step irritatingly sure of itself. You turn back to the table. Meg reaches for her notebook as if nothing happened, but her hands tremble slightly. He's a friend, she says. An old one, nothing more. You nod, too stiffly. It's none of my concern, you say. A lie that tastes strange in your mouth. By evening, preparations begin for the St. Nicholas's supper. The kitchen becomes a storm of movement. Chopped herbs, simmering broths, light pastries lined like soldiers awaiting inspection. You watch her command the room, calm, precise, unafraid of men twice her height. Inside the private dining room, steam rises in gentle curls. Gentlemen lift spoons, their brows lifting in surprise at flavours lighter than expected, yet richer than they deserve. You remain near the door, listening to murmurs that drift through. That sauce is exceptional. Balanced, surprisingly so. Whoever prepared this understands restraint. Restraint. A word you've claimed for years, but tonight restraint belongs to both of you. When the supper ends, Meg wipes her hands on her apron, weary but glowing with quiet pride. You stand beside her reviewing notes. She glances up. You've stopped scowling, she says softly. I don't scowl, you reply. Her smile says otherwise. And for one fleeting moment you allow yourself to think. Perhaps the 12 days will not be a battlefield, but the beginning of something neither of you expected. 2 weeks later, Christmas Eve arrives with a sharp wind and a sky the colour of pewter. The club is restless, men entering with stamped boots, shaking off cold, eager for warmth and spectacle. This St. Nicholas's supper earned praise. But tonight's Christmas Eve supper, this is the first public test, the one every member will remember. In the kitchen, Meg Fletcher ties her apron, already flushed from the heat, directing the staff with quiet authority. You watch her at the stove, calm, focused, wrists moving with a rhythm that could almost be mistaken for grace. For one suspended moment, the chaos around her fades. You see only her. You shake the thought away. Tonight must be perfect. Not for sentiment. For the club. Meg places a spoon beside you. Taste, she says. You hesitate, but you taste. The spiced broth is lighter than it smells. Warm, fragrant, perfectly balanced. You clear your throat. It is acceptable. She almost smiles. High praise. You pretend you didn't hear that. Evening settles, and the gentlemen fill the dining room. Laughter rises with the steam from the dishes. Goose carved neatly, miniature mince pies arranged like jewels, a trifle so delicate it surprises even you. The reactions drift through the doorway. Remarkable balance. Not heavy at all. Whoever crafted this understands the stomach. The last one lands like a second heartbeat. When service ends, Meg wipes her hands, exhausted but glowing with that quiet pride you're beginning to recognise too well. You mean to tell her the work was admirable. You do not get the chance. As you step outside for a breath of cold air, a carriage pulls up. The door opens. Lydia Vale steps out, wrapped in pale fur, cheeks rosy from the winter wind, eyes quick as needles. She's not here to dine, she cannot, but she's here to be seen. Julian, she says warmly, I've heard the club is serving miracles. You stiffen. Who told you that? Everyone, she replies with a laugh. I almost wish I could taste them myself. She taps your sleeve. Don't look so grim. A man should accept praise gracefully. Before you answer, she glances toward the kitchen entrance. Her gaze lands on Meg, just stepping out to speak with a supplier about tomorrow's deliveries. The two women exchange a brief, assessing glance. Soft, sharp, fleeting. You see the flicker in Meg's eyes, a flicker you have no right wanting to soothe. Lydia leans close enough that her breath warms your cheek. Tell your cook she needn't fear me, she whispers. I've no appetite left for rivalry. The words sting for reasons you cannot name. You return inside to find Meg leaning against the wall of the corridor, arms folded, eyes down. Who was she? Meg asks, tone deceptively steady. Miss Vale, you answer. An acquaintance. An acquaintance who calls you Julian, she says. You inhale, a dangerous breath. It is none of your concern. She gives a quiet laugh, soft, brittle. I see. You should leave it alone. You don't. If you have a question, Miss Fletcher, ask it plainly. She meets your gaze. I thought tonight meant something. The way you looked at the dishes, the way you looked at the room. A small pause. Forgive me. I must have read more into your manner tonight than I should have. The words land like a blow you never prepared for. But before you can respond, a steward pushes through the corridor asking urgently about tomorrow's menus. Meg steps aside. Her voice is polite again. Excuse me, Dr. Ashford. I have work to finish. The distance between you feels colder than the winter air outside. You tell yourself you have done nothing wrong. You tell yourself she should not care. You tell yourself you should not care that she cares. But as the door swings shut behind her, your chest feels heavier than any meal you have ever forbidden. Christmas Day arrives softer than Christmas Eve. Fewer carriages outside the club, more bells, fewer boots. Most gentlemen stay in their own houses, wives, children, duties. But the club does not stand empty. Some men still come. Widowers, bachelors, those who cannot bear a quiet dining room at home. The Christmas Day menu is simpler than last night's display. Clear soup instead of spiced, lighter roast, smaller puddings. In the kitchen, Meg Fletcher moves more slowly than yesterday, but no less precisely. Most of them will have feasted at home already, she says. They will not want another battle on their plates. You are certain, you ask? Food is feeling, she replies. No one wants to feel guilty on Christmas Day. You could argue, you don't. The noon and afternoon meals pass without fuss. The men who come eat quietly, say little, and leave looking less hollow than when they arrived. By evening, the club thins. The last guest departs with a nod and a murmured "Good Christmas, Ashford." Snow begins to fall outside. Fine, reluctant, barely enough to coat the cobbles. You return to the kitchen to check the stoves before the night staff bank the coals. You expect emptiness. Instead, you find Meg at the side table, carefully covering a few dishes you did not see served. Roast goose, carved small, potatoes crisped in dripping, edges golden, a bowl of carrots glazed with something that catches the light, and a modest portion of plum pudding, dark and shining. You frown. These were not sent out. No, she says, I set them aside. She hesitates. For you. I thought you might forget to eat. You stare at the plates. For years you have eaten standing up, swallowing whatever was nearest when work allowed. Food as necessity, not as kindness. Something in your chest moves. You should eat as well, you say. She shakes her head quickly. It wouldn't be proper, Dr. Ashford. A cook does not sit down to table with a gentleman, especially here. The club is empty, you answer. The doors are locked. The staff have gone home. You pull out the small table near the stove where kitchen boys usually snatch mouthfuls when no one looks. Sit, Miss Fletcher. Consider it a medical order. You have worked through yesterday and today with barely a pause. She looks at the door, at you, at the food. This is not usual, she whispers. Nothing about this Christmas has been usual, you reply. Sit. She obeys. Slowly, carefully, as if the chair might vanish from beneath her the moment she trusts it. You sit opposite. The plates between you steam quietly. The kitchen feels suddenly smaller, warmer. You take the first bite of goose. The skin is crisp, but not greasy. The flesh beneath is tender, scented with herbs and orange zest rather than smothered in fat. The taste hits the back of your throat like memory. You're 8 again. Your father laughing at a club table, carving meat, passing plates, telling you that there is no better cure for a hard day than an honest roast and good company. He died 3 winters later. Too much meat, too much wine, too little restraint. Or so you decided. You put down your fork. Is it wrong? Meg asks softly. You shake your head. No. You taste the carrots next. Sweet, bright, with a hint of spice that wakes the tongue. The potatoes crunch, then yield. Not heavy, not pallid, balanced. How did you learn to cook like this, you ask? She smiles faintly. My mother cooked for a small inn. My father traded in vegetables and grain before he... She stops. You understand unfinished sentences. They taught me that food is meant to comfort, she continues. When he died, I promised myself I would never feed anyone something that tasted like grief. You swallow. Food can kill, you say quietly. Yes, she agrees. So can fear. You look at her then. Really look. At the way she eats without apology. At the way she enjoys each bite as if it is allowed. At the way she has saved this meal for you, even when you gave her every reason not to think of your comfort at all. You try the plum pudding last. Rich, yes. dense with dried fruit and spice. But she has cut the portion small, served it with a lighter sauce, not the usual heavy deluge of brandy and cream. You take a mouthful. It tastes like the ghosts of old Christmases, and the possibility of new ones that do not end in a physician's verdict. Too much, she asks. For once, you answer slowly, no. She laughs then, properly. The sound cuts straight through the stiffness left by Christmas Eve. You surprise me, Dr. Ashford, she says. You surprise me far more than you should, you reply before you can stop yourself. Silence. Not awkward. Not entirely comfortable either. Just new. When you finally stand, she begins to gather the plates. Thank you, you say, she stills. For what? For keeping some aside, you answer. For remembering that I might be hungry. I had forgotten what it was to have someone do that. Her expression softens in a way you cannot afford to examine closely. Good night, Dr. Ashford, she murmurs. Good night, Miss Fletcher. You leave the kitchen with your coat smelling faintly of goose and spice, and something warmer you do not name. The second day of Christmas arrives with less quiet. By late afternoon, the steward is almost breathless. Full tables, Dr. Ashford, every seat reserved. You step into the kitchen. Meg is already in command, directing roasts, soups, vegetables and puddings, with the kind of calm that makes chaos look effortless. Tonight's dishes are a parade of colour. Clear soup laced with shreds of chicken and herbs, steam rising in delicate spirals. Salmon, poached gently, gleaming beside lemon slices and fresh dill. Roast fowl brushed with a glistening glaze. Citrus, perhaps, and a hint of honey. Skin crackling when the knife goes through. Greens, not grey and limp but bright. Tossed with butter and toasted crumbs. Baked apples split open, releasing cinnamon and sugar in slow curls of scent. Topped with just enough cream to soften, not drown. You taste each element before it leaves the kitchen. The soup warms without dragging. The fish is gentle, almost cleansing. The fowl tastes like celebration without punishment. The apples taste like forgiveness. The gentleman will expect to be impressed, you say. They will be fed, Meg answers. Impressed or not is their own affair, you almost smile. Service begins. Plates leave the kitchen in an endless line. Voices carry back in fragments. This is not what I expected. Lighter than my cook's, but somehow more satisfying. I could almost eat this twice. On the third day of Christmas, they return. On the fourth day, more join them. Members who have not visited in months, drawn by the rumours of food that does not sit like a stone in the gut. On the fifth day, Lord Redcombe himself tastes every dish before sitting. He samples the soup, the fish, the roast. He chews slowly, swallows. This will do, he says. Keep this standard, Ashford, and the club will not merely survive. It will be the envy of half London. The praise is directed at you. You know you did not earn it alone. That night, after the last plate is scrubbed and the fires are banked, you find Meg wiping down the main table again. She looks tired. Beautifully, honestly tired. The kind of tired that comes from work that matters. Was the supper acceptable? She asks without looking up. Better than acceptable, you say. She pauses, then looks up, cautious. You're difficult to read, Dr. Ashford. You should say, good. You always do. Instead you answer, so were you. For a moment something undefinable passes between you. Then she smiles, small, real, and entirely unguarded. Tomorrow is the 6th day of Christmas, she says. The gentlemen will expect something special. And they shall have it, you reply. The 6th day of Christmas arrives with a quieter confidence. No crowd of newcomers, no frantic rumours. Just steady, satisfied diners who return because the meals have begun to feel like tradition. The dishes leave the kitchen smoothly, as if the staff have learned to breathe in unison. It is a calm day, almost deceptively so. The kind of calm that only exists because something larger waits just ahead, pressing close to the new year. You leave the kitchen knowing one thing with terrible, undeniable clarity. The club is no longer the only thing you're afraid of losing. The 7th day of Christmas, New Year's Eve, arrives with more noise than the 6 days before it combined. Carriages clog the street outside the club. Gentlemen step out in fine coats and louder spirits, determined to end the year with indulgence. Inside, the staff move with sharpened energy. The kitchen heat rises fast. Meg Fletcher ties her apron twice as tightly as usual. "You've planned for too many dishes," you say quietly. She shakes her head. "They will expect celebration tonight. We cannot disappoint them." You want to argue, but her focus is impenetrable today. She is tired. You see it in the set of her shoulders. You see it in the way she presses a hand briefly to her side when she thinks no one is looking. You say nothing. You do not know how. The first hours pass in a blur. Platters of roasted game, bowls of spice soup, racks of warm rolls, dishes that take 3 men to carry. You taste what you must. You correct seasoning when needed, but mostly you watch her, moving from stove to board, board to oven, oven to table, with a steadiness you did not know existed in anyone. By 9 o'clock, the club is roaring. The dining room hums with voices, laughter, clattering knives, spilled wine, and then you hear a voice that cuts the air in a direction you do not want. "Meg?" You turn. Samuel Pike stands in the kitchen doorway, coat askew, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with too much holiday ale. He's not on the guest list. He's not even supposed to be inside the club. Meg stiffens. "Sam, you cannot be here." "Just wanted to see how you're doing," he says, stepping closer, breath thick with spirits. "Thought maybe you needed help." "You're drunk," she says firmly. He laughs. "Everyone is drunk tonight." You move toward him. "This is a private establishment. You need to leave." He looks at you with the resentment of a man who already assumes you stand between him and something he believes is his. "Thought you were a physician," he mutters. "Didn't realize you'd become a keeper." Your jaw tightens. Meg steps in before the tension ignites. "Sam, please, go home." He wavers, looks at her, softens, then blows out a breath and nods, or tries to. He turns, swaying slightly, catches the edge of a stack of trays. One clatters, another tilts, a jar of oil falls. It strikes the floor, shatters. Oil slicks across the uneven stone, sliding toward the open hearth where a few embers have fallen from the grate. A spark catches. Flame leaps upward in a sudden vicious bloom. You act first. "Move!" you shout, but it's too late. A drunken foot slips. A tray crashes. Sparks jump from the stove grate. Tiny, bright, hungry. The oil ignites. Flame shoots up with a roar that silences the entire kitchen. Someone screams. Someone drops to the floor. Heat slams against your face, fierce and instant. "Get water," you command. Men scramble, buckets slosh. A cloth catches fire, a pan falls, another goes up in flame. You turn. Meg is too close, far too close. She reaches for a pot of water, but the fire is already licking up the side table, racing toward her skirts. You grab her arm. "Meg!" She stumbles, gasps just once. You pull her back, hard into your chest as sparks burst against the floor she was standing on moments ago. For a heartbeat, heat behind you, her breath against your collar, her fingers gripping your sleeve. Everything stops. You hold her shoulders, too tightly. You do not let go. Then the chaos resumes. Water hits the fire. More buckets fly. Men cough in the smoke. Samuel Pike is dragged out by 2 footmen, cursing and apologizing in equal measure. The flames die slowly, hissing, spitting, reluctant to release their hold. And then the kitchen is quiet. Burnt. Steam rising from the scorched table. 2 pans ruined. The corner of the room blackened. Meg lifts a trembling hand to her face. "You almost," you begin. She shakes her head quickly. "I'm fine." But she isn't. You see it. Her hands shake. Her breath comes unevenly. Her eyes shine with shock she doesn't want anyone to notice. You lower your voice. You could have been badly hurt. She looks up at you then, really looks, and for the first time you see fear in her eyes. Not of you, not of fire, fear of what could have happened. Samuel didn't mean, she starts. I don't care what he meant, you say, more forcefully than intended. Her eyes widen just enough to show she heard something in your tone, something you did not plan to reveal. Outside, the bells begin to ring. Midnight, New Year. Upstairs in the dining room, the club erupts in cheers. Oblivious of the kitchen fire, the staff spill out into the back passage, some coughing, some fetching more water, some running to alert the steward, leaving you and Meg briefly alone in the smoke-sweet air. And the truth you can no longer ignore. Tonight, for the first time, you are not afraid for the club. You are afraid for her. New Year's morning, you return to the club before the fog has even lifted from the street. The kitchen, in daylight, looks worse. The blackened corner by the hearth, the warped iron of one stove, a table with its edge eaten through by flame, smoke stains reaching up the wall like dirty fingers. Meg stands near the far end of the room, a broken earthenware pot in her hands. One of the handles is snapped clean away. She doesn't look up when you enter. Good morning, she says, voice thin. Morning. You move closer. Did you sleep, you ask. A little, she lies. You don't bother lying back. Footsteps echo in the corridor. The steward appears first, his face tight. Behind him come Lord Redcombe and 3 older club members, men who have eaten here for decades, whose complaints carry weight. Redcombe surveys the damage with a hard, slow look. One of the older men sniffs. I said it was cursed, he mutters. First the dull menus, then the new experiments, now fire. The place wants to die. Bad management, the other replies. It would be kinder to close the doors before some poor devil dies of more than indigestion. Meg stiffens. The words are not hers to answer. They are yours. Redcombe turns on you. Well, Ashford, he asks, is this your medicine at work? No, you say. This is an accident caused by a drunk with no business near a stove. He waits. You do not look away. Miss Fletcher responded quickly, you add. If she hadn't, you'd be standing in a burnt-out shell instead of a damaged kitchen. One of the older members snorts. The club survived long before her, he says. Perhaps it is time we return to simpler fare, or close the place and be done with it. Meg draws a small breath. If my presence brings scandal, she says quietly, I can withdraw. The club should not suffer on my account. She grips the broken pot a little tighter. That would be tidy, the complaining gentleman agrees. You speak before Redcombe can. No. Every head turns. Meg's eyes widen. You step forward, placing yourself between her and the worst of their looks. If anyone is to be blamed for new menus, you say, blame me. I advised the changes. I encouraged Redcombe to let us test them. But don't pretend this club isn't standing on the strength of her food. A hush follows. You go on. Without Miss Fletcher's cooking, you would still have half-empty tables and jokes made at your expense across half the city. You know it. You've heard the talk. The steward shifts, uncomfortable but unable to disagree. Redcombe's jaw clenches. You speak very boldly for a man whose kitchen nearly burned, he says. You hold your ground. I speak plainly because it is true, you answer. Close the club if you must, but do not pretend her absence would save it. It would kill it faster. A beat of silence. Then, unexpectedly, one of the other nobles clears his throat. I'll say this, he murmurs. My digestion hasn't been this steady in years. Whatever she's doing, I prefer it to the old leaden puddings. Another nods reluctantly. My wife says I come home less grey after suppers here now, he admits. If you mean to keep the club, Redcombe, you'd do better mending this kitchen than throwing away the cook who revived it. Redcombe looks from you to Meg, assessing. Repairing this will not be cheap, he says, nor quick. I gave you until 12th night, 4 days. Then we use them, you reply. One of the nobles lifts a hand. My mason is idle this week, he says. I'll send him. Another adds, My brother owns an ironworks. He can spare new grates and pans. A third, my household can send extra hands to scrub and carry. The story of a noble club burning its own kitchen will spread far faster than a story of men who put it right. Redcombe exhales through his nose. Very well, he says at last. The club will accept such patriotic generosity. His gaze sharpens on you and Meg. You have 4 days, he repeats. If this kitchen cannot serve by 12th night, the doors close. Permanently. He leaves with the others, their coats trailing ash-laden air in their wake. The kitchen feels both emptier and lighter. Meg stares at the broken pot in her hands. I meant what I said, she whispers. I would have stepped away if it helped. I know, you answer. That's why I couldn't let you. She looks at you, searching as if trying to understand where this loyalty came from. You always speak as if the club is a part of you, she says, as if its life is more important than your own. It used to be. Before she walked into your kitchen. Outside, carts begin to arrive. The mason, the carpenter, men with tools and sand and stone. The steward hurries back in. Lord Fulbridge's men are here, he says, and more coming. We'll need to clear space. Meg nods, shoulders straightening. Then we should begin, she says. Smoke clings if you let it sit. She moves away to organise buckets and cloths, calling to the scullery boys, giving orders with quiet clarity that makes men twice her size obey without question. You watch her for a moment. Work is where she hides. Control is where you hide. For now, you let both of you keep your armour. You take a brush and bend to scrub beside her. The next 2 days blur. Stone is scraped. Walls are washed. Charred wood is carried out into the yard. Carpenters replace the ruined table. Masons patch the worst of the scorched corner. New iron grates arrive, still smelling faintly of forge smoke. You patrol the room like a physician on a ward, checking that fumes are vented, that no one strains more than his body can bear, that Meg does not work herself into collapse. She comes close, but not over. Every time she sways, she catches herself. Every time her hands shake, she grips a bucket tighter. At night, you go home smelling of ash and steep your lungs in clean air, but sleep still refuses to come. When you do drift, you see fire on stone and Meg too near it. You wake with your heart pounding and the taste of smoke in your throat. On the second afternoon, a message arrives from the Harrow townhouse. Mr. Harrow wishes to speak with you. You go. His drawing room is warm and over-decorated. Gilt, velvet, evidence of new money eager to look old. He stands by the window, face flushed with more emotion than wine. Dr. Ashford, he says, you allowed my cook to be caught in a club fire. You take the blow. She was in a kitchen, you reply. Kitchens have fire. An accident happened. She prevented it from being worse. My wife is distraught, he continues. The servants chatter. A woman in my employ nearly burned in a gentleman's club. Do you understand how that sounds? Yes, you say. And do you understand how it sounds that half that club now sings the praises of Harrow's cook and credits her with saving the place from ruin? He falters. My name has been mentioned? He asks. In every sentence that contains hers, you answer. The dessert that calmed Lord Fulbridge's stomach. Harrow's cook. The roast that improved Lord Gresham's temper. Harrow's cook. The menus that may yet rescue a failing club. Harrow's cook. His indignation softens into cautious vanity. So they know where she comes from, he murmurs. They do, you say. And they know you were generous enough to let her attend the club 3 days a week. He lifts his chin a little. I cannot have her permanently stolen, he says. My wife would never forgive me. No one is suggesting that, you reply. She will continue in your household. But if the club is to survive, we need her for these last days. After 12th night, you may decide whether to share her still. He considers this, then nods once. Very well, he says. 3 more days. If she is hurt, I will hold you personally responsible. You already do, you say dryly. Surprisingly, that almost draws a reluctant smile from him. Back at the club, the worst of the black has been scrubbed away. The kitchen still smells faintly of smoke, but now also of soap and damp stone. That evening, long after most of the men have staggered home, you return downstairs to check the stoves. You find Meg sitting on an overturned crate near the hearth. The broken pot rests in her lap, its missing handle a clean, cruel absence. "You're still here," you say. She startles, then smiles faintly. "So are you," she answers. You move closer. "Why that pot?" you ask. "We have others." "It was the first one I used here," she says, "and the closest to the one my mother used at the inn. It wasn't special to anyone else, just me." She runs her thumb along the crack. "I know it's foolish," she adds. "It's only clay, but it felt like proof." "Of what?" "That I belonged in a kitchen like this," she says quietly. "That I could make something better than what I came from." You sit on the edge of the nearest table. The room is dim, lit by a single lantern and the dull orange of banked coals. "You do belong here," you say. "The club would not be alive without you." She swallows. "I didn't thank you," she murmurs, "for pulling me back. You don't need—" "Yes," she interrupts gently. "I do. You pulled me back before I even understood how close it was." You look at her. "At the Harrow townhouse," you say. "You pulled me back from the falling pan. I have not forgotten." "I didn't think you noticed," she admits. "I notice more than you think," you answer. She hesitates. "Did I frighten you?" she asks. The truth rises, uninvited. "Yes." Her eyes widen, not with triumph, but with something strangely soft. "I'm sorry," she whispers. "You're alive," you say. "I am not sorry for that." Silence settles between you, not heavy, not entirely comfortable either, just honest. Lady Winslow once wrote, "Love announces itself in noise, fear arrives in silence. Mind what you're most afraid to name." You used to think it clever, now you think it intrusive. Because sitting here, in a kitchen that still smells of ash, you know which fear clamped both your lungs the moment the fire caught. Not fear for the club, fear for her. You push the thought away before it can settle. "We still have a feast to plan," you say, changing the subject. "The 12th Night table won't build itself." She pulls in a breath, grateful for the work. "We've lost some stores," she says, slipping back into practical tone. "The best flour, some spices, a whole side of bacon." "Redcomb's friends are sending replacements," you reply. "And Harrow still has his pride. He won't want his cook failing in front of half the nobility." Her mouth tilts. "So we take what we have," she says, "and what they send, and we make it look deliberate." "Yes," you answer. "We build something grand from ruins." You drag a crate closer and sit opposite her. Between you on the upturned lid, you lay out the problem like a patient on a table. Which dishes can be made with fewer fats? Which flavours can be deepened with herbs instead of excess? How to make a 12th night cake when some of the sugar is gone and the almond stock is low? She sketches in the air with her hands as she talks through it. One big pot for shared stew, roasted roots dressed as carefully as any bird, a single grand cake with a hidden bean and pea to crown a king and queen of the evening. By the time the plan is complete, there is flour dust on your sleeve again, and ash streaking her cheek where she brushed at it absently. You watch her for a moment too long. She notices. "What?" she asks, half defensive. "Nothing," you say. "Only, you're very good at this." "At what?" "Making do," she replies. "At making do feel like plenty," you answer. Her gaze drops, and a small smile appears. "Go home, Dr. Ashford," she says softly. "If you faint in the middle of 12th night, the gentlemen will never forgive me." "They would forgive you," you say. "They would blame me." "For once," she answers, "I think they'd be right." You leave the kitchen with the plan for a feast in your pocket, ash on your cuffs, and a truth you're still not ready to name sitting quietly beside your ribs, waiting for its moment. By the 4th morning of January, the kitchen almost resembles itself again. The scorch marks have been scrubbed to faint shadows. The new iron grates gleam with the sheen of fresh forging. The heat feels cleaner, steadier, like a heart beginning to beat again after shock. Meg stands before the main table, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, studying a row of trial dishes like a general reviewing marching lines. "Twelfth Night must feel grand," she murmurs, mostly to herself. "But not heavy, not after all these days of feasting." You nod. "Show me what you've made." She lifts a cloth. "This is a practice cake," she adds. "The proper Twelfth Night cake will be baked fresh tomorrow." The cake was lighter than tradition demands. The fruit cut small, the crumbs soft, the decoration delicate rather than gaudy. A single golden thread of icing spirals the top. "It looks richer than it is," she says, "but it will not sit like stone." You taste it. It is warm, fragrant, surprisingly gentle. "You've struck the balance," you say. She lets out a breath, soft and relieved. Then the modist's muse arrives. Lydia Vale, wrapped in a winter shawl, cheeks pale, eyes darker than before, slips through the back door as if she fears leaving footprints. Meg startles. "Miss Vale?" she whispers. Lydia holds up a hand. "Please, I didn't come to make trouble. I came because—" She swallows. "Because I cannot keep living like this." Her gaze flicks to the stove, to the bowls, to the cake. "I am afraid of food," she confesses in a rushed whisper. "Not just because of how it changes me, but because I was mocked for eating too much as a girl. I learned to take tiny bites so no one would notice my hunger. Then I stopped eating when anyone watched. And then I stopped eating when alone." Meg steps closer, slow and gentle. "Lydia," she says softly, "you've never been weak for wanting comfort." "Comfort?" Lydia repeats with a laugh that breaks halfway. "Comfort feels dangerous. Food feels dangerous. But I saw you." She looks at Meg helplessly. "You cook, you taste, you laugh, without fear. I envy you. You speak before Meg can. You're starving your body," you say quietly, "but worse, you're starving your nerves. When the body fears food, the mind follows. That can be healed, but not by punishing yourself." Her eyes brim. "Then tell me," she whispers, "what should I eat that will not frighten me?" Meg glances at you, and for the first time in days you understand each other without speaking. You move together. You show Lydia a small bowl of warm milk poured over soft bread touched with honey. "Start here," you say. Gentle, warm, safe. Meg slices a piece of the lighter 12th cake. "This is not rich enough to weigh you down," she says. "Just sweet enough to remind you food can be soft." Lydia hesitates. Her hand shakes. Then she takes a single trembling bite. Tears spill. "It doesn't hurt," she whispers. "No," Meg says. "It doesn't." You add quietly, "Food is not the enemy. Shame is—" Lydia wipes her cheeks. "Thank you," she says, voice breaking. "Both of you." She leaves as she came, quiet, swift, but lighter somehow. Meg watches the door close. "That was kind of you," she murmurs. "It was necessary," you reply. "No, you were kind," she says, meeting your gaze. You look away too quickly, too obviously. That afternoon, as the sun sets in a dull winter gold, the back door opens again. Samuel Pike, sober today, hat in hand, eyes clearing but still guilty. He stops in front of Meg. "I came to apologize," he mutters, "for everything, and to ask if you'd consider starting over." You freeze at the stove. Meg straightens. "Sam," she says, voice steady, "you're a good man at heart. But you don't listen. You come only when you want something. You want comfort, not partnership. And you want a life that never asks you to grow." She shakes her head. "I can't live that way. Not anymore." Samuel stares at her. "So that's it?" "That's it," she says gently. He swallows once, nods, and leaves without another word. You exhale very slowly. Meg notices. "Oh," she says softly. "You heard." "Yes." "And you're relieved," she adds. You don't answer. You cannot. As evening deepens, you find yourselves alone again, testing one last dish. A broth thickened with crushed parsnip and a touch of cream, comforting, warm, but not heavy. Meg adjusts the seasoning, you adjust the consistency. When you taste the final version, something settles in your chest. This, she says, should open the 12th night feast. You nod. It's ours, you say without thinking. She stills. Ours? You cover the slip with controlled calm. I mean the technique, you say. Your flavour, my balance. Ah, she murmurs, but her cheeks colour faintly. You set the pot aside. Meg leans on the table, the faintest tremble still in her hands from too many days without proper rest. You always know when a dish needs lightness, she says, even when it fights you. And you always know when joy matters more than rules, you reply. She smiles at that, soft, tired, earnest. You have never wanted to step closer more than you do now. But instead you say, we will finish this by 12th night. Yes, she says, together. The kitchen glows with lamplight and new iron. Food simmers gently on the stove, and your heart, despite every wall you've built over the years, begins to beat in a rhythm you recognize too well. Not fear for the club, not duty, not caution, but something warmer, quieter, and far more dangerous. A truth settling in the silence between you, the kind Lady Winslow once warned you never to ignore. 12th night arrives with a sky the colour of pewter and a wind sharp enough to cut breath in half. By late afternoon, the kitchen is ready, barely, miraculously, completely. The new iron grates glow a steady red. The tables gleam as if they have never known flame. The air smells of spices, citrus, and rising bread. Clean, warm scents that feel like victory. Meg Fletcher stands at the centre of it all, tying her apron for the last time this season. You rebuilt a kitchen from ashes, you say quietly. She smiles, tired, bright, steady. We rebuilt it, she corrects. By 6 o'clock the dining room brims with noblemen, coats shed, boots stamped dry, voices rising with curiosity. Whispers follow every man through the door. The club's rebirth, the 12th night feast, the cook behind the miracle. You stand with the steward as the first course leaves the kitchen. A clear, golden broth, your broth and hers, warm, nourishing, brightened with herbs instead of cream, gentle on the stomach, comforting on the tongue. The gentlemen murmur approval. The second course, roasted roots dressed like jewels, glazed lightly, seasoned precisely, arranged with painterly care. The third, tender fish with a delicate sauce, rich in flavour yet impossibly light. Course after course appears, not heavy, not bland, not indulgent, not joyless, just perfect. Your father would have understood this balance. You feel it in your chest, that quiet warmth that once came from meals you shared at his side. Redcomb watches the table with arms folded, then slowly, painfully, as if lifting a weight, he nods in approval. Just at that moment a ripple crosses the room as the door opens. A visiting marquess, tall, cold-eyed, influential enough that even Redcomb seems smaller, enters with his entourage. He sits. He eats. And after a long, deliberate pause, he sets down his fork and stands. Who, he demands, is responsible for this table? Silence falls like snow. Every head turns to you. You step forward. Meg Fletcher, you say clearly. The cook. A murmur rolls through the room. You continue, voice steady. She built these menus with intelligence, courage, and instinct. She restored this club from dullness. She rebuilt this kitchen from ashes. Whatever credit exists tonight belongs to her. Meg, standing half hidden in the doorway, goes very still. The Marquess studies you. Then he gestures for Meg to step forward. Come here, Miss Fletcher, he commands. Not unkindly, simply as a man accustomed to obedience. She walks in, chin lifted, eyes bright. He bows his head just slightly. I have dined in many houses, he says. Few meals have been worth remembering. Tonight is an exception. You have talent, and more than talent, you have judgment. London should know your name. A poet near the corner raises his cup. I should write verses about your dishes, he declares. Laughter follows, warm, genuine. The whispers shift, the unseen culinary genius. Harrow's cook, impossible? No, Ashford's cook now. Remarkable woman. Redcombe steps forward next. In a measured voice he announces, The club will remain open, permanently. Applause rises. And furthermore, he adds, Miss Meg Fletcher is hereby appointed mistress of the club's table. Meg gasps softly. The position will carry proper pay, he continues, and the respect due to the mind behind this revival. The men nod in approval. Some clap, some lift their cups. Meg looks at you, stunned, grateful, overwhelmed. You nod once, she deserves every bit of this. Later, when the feast has ended and the men are still choosing their 12th night tokens, a bean for the king, a pea for the queen, even if the queen is a gentleman tonight, you slip outside with Meg. The cold air bites, but her presence feels warm enough. I can walk with you part way, you offer. She hesitates, then nods. You walk slowly through the quiet street, lamps glowing gold in windows, snow threatening but not falling, the city hushed as if listening. Tonight was, she begins, then stops. More than you expected, you offer. More than I ever dreamed, she whispers. You stop beneath a balcony draped in frost. I need to say something, you tell her. She looks up. You take a breath. I fell in love with you somewhere between the first argument over broth and the moment you stood in ashes planning a feast. Her lips part. I admired your courage, you continue, your instinct, your joy, and I am sorry. The words catch. You force them through. I am sorry for every moment I made you feel small. You deserved better. You always have. She swallows hard. I never thought, she says quietly, that a gentleman could love a cook without shame. I have no shame, you reply, only fear. Fear of losing someone You stop yourself, but the silence says the rest. She steps closer. Julian, she whispers, I feared you would always choose discipline over joy. Not with you, you say. Not any more? A faint smile appears. Then what would you choose? She asks. You answer without hesitation. I choose to guard your joy, not smother it. To protect your health, not imprison you in it. To keep a place for you at my table. Your voice softens. And beside me, if you'll have me? Meg's breath shakes. Then she nods. Slow, trembling, certain. Yes, she says. I will. You take her hand, bare, cold, trembling, and hold it as if anchoring something precious. Inside the club, laughter erupts. The 12th night cake has been sliced. A cheer rises. Someone found the bean and is crowned king of the feast. Another found the pea and is crowned queen, though he's a red-faced gentleman laughing through his humiliation. Tradition never cared for rules. You glance back at the windows glowing warm behind you. Then you look at Meg. Tonight, you say softly, they've crowned their king and queen. You lift her hand gently. But you murmur, are the queen of my table. She blushes and does not let go of your hand as the winter stars look on in quiet blessing.